You've tried to quit scrolling before, deleted the app, set the limits, made the promises, and somehow you're still here. And that's not a willpower problem, it's most certainly not a motivation piece. So let's throw that out the window for just a second out here. It is a very simple biology problem. And a problem has always two elements, attributes, whatever, you get the point. One is the problem statement, the actual definition of what the problem is. And the second is, of course, a solution to that problem. People rush into giving you solutions. Whoa. Let's pump the brakes on that, amigo. Just a second here. Take a step back and let's try to understand why we do what it is we do. And the moment you understand that difference, life becomes peachy. Let's start with the science. Why on earth can I not stop scrolling? So your brain has a reward system. At the center of it is a chemical called dopamine. I'm sure you've heard of it. Now, most people think that dopamine is actually a pleasure chemical, the thing that you feel after something good happens. But that's not quite right. Dopamine is actually the anticipation chemical. It's what fires when your brain thinks a reward might be coming. The uncertainties and the maybes. Here's where it gets really interesting. Back in the 1950s, a psychologist named B.F. Skinner ran an important experiment. He gave rats a lever. Sometimes pressing it gave it food, and sometimes it didn't. Completely randomized. And what he found was that the random reward, the unpredictable one, created far more compulsive lever pressing than a guaranteed reward ever did. Does it sound familiar? That's basically your Instagram feed, your TikToks. Every time you open the app, maybe there's something incredible, maybe there's not. You never know until you actually go through your feed. There's this element of surprise that's waiting for you at the end of all this. And that uncertainty, that variable reward schedule is, according to research published in peer-reviewed journals on social media addiction, it is one of the most powerful drivers of compulsive behaviors known to psychology. So you're not just weak, you're a rat pressing a lever. And the lever was designed by some of the most sophisticated engineers in the world specifically to keep you pressing. That's basically their jobs. But here's what most people don't realize. And this is the part that changes almost everything. It's not the scrolling itself that's the problem. It's what the scrolling has done to your baseline. Because over time, every time you flood your brain with rapid fire dopamine hits, your brain adapts. It downregulates. A simple way of saying all this is your brain is cooked. Which means every day life starts to feel flat, boring, unsatisfying, and you probably know the drill. And when everyday life feels flat, you reach for the phone, which floods the dopamine again, which makes every day feel like even flatter. That is the trap. And now you can see it very clearly. However, knowing the trap exists is only step one. Because wait for it, there's another mechanism at work that keeps you locked in it. One that runs even deeper. Let me tell you something that took me a long time to accept about myself. I became terrified of boredom. Not in a dramatic way, just the second I had a quiet moment, I was reaching for my phone, waiting for a coffee, in a lift, at a red light, any gap, any pause, any moment without stimulation, phone, instantly. And I thought that was just a bad habit at first, but science tells a more interesting story. Researchers studying what they call boredom intolerance, the inability to sit with unstimulated moments, basically have found that it's one of the strongest predictors of problematic social media use. People who can't tolerate boredom use their phones far more compulsively than those who can. That's just a fact, and research at this point is very evident on this. But here's the thing, we weren't born this way. Boredom intolerance is learned, and it's learned specifically through the habit of immediately escaping boredom every time it appears. Now I want you to think about all this for a second and sit on this. Every time you felt bored and picked up your phone, you trained your brain. Boredom is a problem that needs to be immediately solved. Now, do that enough number of times and your brain starts treating an empty moment like a threat. However, flip that around for just a second and the solution becomes very obvious to you. If boredom intolerance is something that you've learned, quite honestly, it can also be unlearned. And relearning how to sit with boredom, even for short windows, is one of the most powerful things you can do to reduce compulsive scrolling. There, have dropped the first golden nugget, if you will. Now we'll come back to exactly how. But first, there's one more mechanism I need to show you. And we really have to talk about this, because even if you fix the dopamine loop and even if you rebuild your boredom intolerance, there's still a pull that catches most people off guard. Here's something researchers at the University of Pennsylvania found in a controlled study group. When they limited participants' social media use to just 30 minutes a day across 3 weeks, those participants showed significantly lower levels of loneliness and depression. And this is in comparison to a control group who was allowed to use it freely. Think about all this for a second. 30 minutes, that's it. Measurable difference in how people felt about their lives. Where am I going with all this? And the mechanism behind that is something I think about a lot, something that I've also spoken to you about in other videos of mine. Every time you scroll, your brain is running what I call a comparison engine in the background. His career, her body, their relationships, her body, that person's apartment at 26. So a lot of this is not something that happens consciously. It's just something that happens in the background. And most of us, it just happens. And it settles in as a quiet hum of inadequacy that you carry around every day, all night, all the time. And to the most of it, you don't know where it all started because you're consuming all the time. The FOMO, as we call it, the fear of missing out, isn't an accident either. The research shows social media platforms actively exploit it. How? Notifications like your friends are viewing this are deliberately sent to you, are deliberately engineered to trigger anxiety that pulls you back right into the system, right into those platforms, and right into you back to scrolling. But social comparison itself isn't the enemy. That's definitely not the worst part. We've always compared ourselves to others, and it's almost natural. It's how we calibrate. The problem is that scrolling exposes you to a curated, filtered, highlight reel version of thousands of people simultaneously. And if you think about it, that's really not fair. That's not a fair comparison. It's just a rigged game at this point. And the moment you stop playing it, even partially, like the 30-minute study, your baseline satisfaction with your own life just significantly goes up. You're a lot more happier with yourself. And it almost is immediately, just 1 week, people saw significant differences in their own lives. So now you understand the three mechanisms: the dopamine trap, the boredom intolerance loop, and the comparison engine. Together, they're what makes scrolling so hard to quit through sheer willpower alone. But here's where it finally gets good, because now we can talk about the actual fix, and it's not what most people expect. I want to be clear about something before I give you this. This is not a delete all your apps and meditate at sunrise system. I tried that, it just doesn't stick. What sticks is basically working with your brain's wiring, not against it. Like they say, don't go against the grain. Here's what research and my own experience actually supports. Step 1. Name the trigger, not just the habit. Most habit change advice tells you to just break the habit, but neuroscience tells us habits are actually 3-part loops: the trigger, the behavior, and then of course the reward. And you cannot reliably change the behavior without first identifying the trigger. It's impossible. So for 1 week, just 1 week, bear with me. Before you open any social media application, pause for about 2 to 3 seconds and ask yourself this: what am I actually feeling right now? Is it boredom? Is it me being anxious? Is it avoiding something? Am I lonely? Am I angry? And I'm not asking you to change anything yet. Continue what you're doing, but just ask yourself before you do what you're going to do, and name it. Most of your scrolling is triggered by a small set of emotional states, and naming them is the first step to intercepting them. Bringing us to step 2, make the path to scrolling a little longer. Here's a simple but devastatingly effective trick rooted in behavioral science: friction. Yep, that's your ally, the silver bullet, if you will. Research on digital nudges, small design changes that make a behavior slightly harder. That's just basically what it is. Shows that even minor increases in friction dramatically reduces automatic behavior, because automatic behavior runs on zero resistance. Add even a little bit of it and the automaticity just breaks. Practically delete your most used apps from your home screen. I know I said I won't ask you to delete, but hold on. Put them in a folder 2 taps away. That's all I'm asking you to do. Turn your phone to grayscale. This alone has been shown to reduce usage because the visual reward of the feed diminishes significantly. So these aren't just barriers, they're just enough pauses to let your prefrontal cortex catch up, your rational brain that is, catch up to the impulses that you've just had. Step 3, rebuild your boredom intolerance deliberately. Remember what we said about boredom intolerance being learned? Here's how you unlearn it. Start with 5 minutes once a day when you feel you're most bored. Don't reach for your phone, don't reach out for any stimulating factor, just sit with it. Sit with your thought process, sit just by yourself, don't reach out for anything. At first it's going to be very uncomfortable. Note it, obviously. What you'll find after a few days of sitting through this discomfort is that time passes faster than you think. And with that, after a few weeks, you'll start to notice something even better. And this is what researchers have documented thoroughly and consistently time and time again, is boredom, when you stop escaping it, becomes a precursor to creative thought process, to ideas, to actual rest. Your brain basically needs unstimulated time, the same way your muscles need recovery time. For those of you gym rats, you probably know this analogy a lot better. This isn't wasted time. It's the most productive thing you can actually do with a quiet 5 minute by yourself. Bringing us to step 4, replace the reward, not just the behavior. Your brain isn't magically going to stop wanting dopamine. It just doesn't work that way. All you can do is to redirect it. The most effective substitute rewards for scrolling are activities that produce a slower, a more sustained form of dopamine release into your system. It could be activities like exercising, creative work, reading, conversation, making something useful. Name it, you probably know what I'm talking about. These don't basically spike and crash like what social media does to your brain. They build and then they sustain. Over time, your brain basically recalibrates to prefer them over doom scrolling. This is what identity-based habit formation, popularized by researchers like James Clear, rooted in earlier psychological work, is really about. You're not trying to stop being someone who scrolls, you're becoming someone who just does not need to. And the differences are huge if you really pay attention to what I'm saying. And there's a huge difference in the two personalities that we're talking about here. Think about that. Bringing us to step 5, use the 30-minute rule and actually respect it. The University of Pennsylvania study didn't tell people to quit social media entirely. The 30 minutes a day still produces significant mental health improvements. So, schedule it. Pick a window, lunch, evening, whatever works for you, just do it. Open the apps, use them intentionally, and just close them out. The difference between scrolling that controls you and scrolling you control is almost entirely about intentionality. Same behavior, completely different relationship to it. Here's the thing I want you to sit with after this. You're not fighting a personal failing. Let's just be clear about that. Let's just get that out of the way. You're pushing back against a system that had $1 billion head start on you, built by engineers whose entire job was to make this as hard as possible, incredibly difficult for you to put your phones down. That's just their jobs. So don't fight yourself on this. The fact that you're watching this, the fact that you're asking these questions, the fact that you want to reclaim your attention already puts you ahead of the curve. The science is incredibly clear on this. Couldn't have been more clear. The mechanisms are absolutely real, but so is the brain's capacity to change. That's what we call neuroplasticity. The brain's ability to rewire its circuitry just by itself. It doesn't stop because you're an adult. It just doesn't work that way. If you think that, think otherwise. It works at any age. That's just basically science at this point. Every time you sit with boredom, instead of escaping it, every time you add friction before you scroll, every time you fight that battle against yourself to stop doing what you're doing, that's basically you literally writing your circuitry. And this isn't motivational fluff at this point. I'm hoping that's clear and gotten out of the way. This isn't another motivational video, but it's just pure science, and that's just the way neuroscience works. So start with this step 1 and probably start tonight. If I were you, just name the trigger. That's it. I'm not expecting you to drop your phones in a beat of a heart, but just name the trigger. That's it. Don't drop your phone at the beat of a heart. Just one small change. And if this gave you something useful, share it with someone who's fighting this too. I'd really appreciate that. So, I'll see you in the next one. Peace.